Good morning, I'm Tamara Shoemaker. This morning I want to talk to you a little bit about the movement that is so necessary for so many of us as we sometimes get discouraged from sitting still, I guess. No movement, no progress towards anything. Sometimes we feel discouraged, so on. First of all, let me tell you about a train trip that I took once from my home in Virginia. I had a writers' conference that I had to be at in New York City, so I took a train from Charlottesville where I got on the train and we traveled north towards New York City, and we would stop different places along the way and let people on and let other people off. And so I got really motion sick, so I just couldn't wait to get to the place where we needed to be. Just really wanted to get there fast. But at one point, the countryside turned into suburbia, and then suburbia turned into cityscape, and the train pulled into the station, and the engines died. And I knew where we were. We were just outside of Washington, D.C., but I hadn't realized that we were staying there for any significant amount of time. I'd been on the train since Charlottesville, and I was tired and motion sick, and I knew we had a long way to go. But we were stuck, and I just felt so stuck, sitting. I was impatient to move, but the time hadn't come yet, not until the conductor came through to check our tickets, which was like an hour later at that point, and I wanted to move. I used to joke with my friends when I was making important decisions that, boy, it'd be nice if the Lord would use skywriting to tell me what His will was. You know, like a nicely scripted out jet stream of fluffy whiteness saying, here you go, you do this, you go there, you be that, please understand this. It'd sure be nice. But as I'd stare at the sky and I'd pray and I'd watch the jet streams sort of blow away with the wind, I was glad that God's word isn't as ephemeral or unsteady as a vapor of cloud. God's word is eternal and pure, says Psalm 19:9. It's truth, says John 17:17. It's life and light, says John 14:6. So the reminder that God appeared to Moses in the form of a cloud today made me kind of sit and think about that for a while. I finished Exodus today. I had been planning to read and write about each chapter as it came, and I still could have, but since chapters 36 through 40 are in large part repetition of everything that I've already written about for building the tabernacle, the instructions, I wanted to get sort of a big picture look at the setup for this place where God would meet with His people. So the repetition of the tabernacle setup, it makes sense, kind of how it's set up. In ancient Near Eastern literature, repetition was used to sort of cement the narrative into the minds of the people that it was trying to teach or to write to. So in essence, in teacher speak, chapters 36 through 40 of Exodus is like a summative assessment. It's the end of the semester exam. It pulls all the facts and the information that the students have picked up over the time that they've been learning and that the teacher has spent time explaining. So, who can tell me what was the name of the outer garment the priest wore? Billy? Well, the ephod. Yes, Billy, you're correct. Great job. Who knows what Moses placed into the ark before he put the atonement cover on it? Susie. The testimony. Why, yes, it was the testimony. Great job. Who knows what the basin for washing turned into later when Solomon built the temple in Jerusalem? George? The sea. You're right, George. Class, good job. You all get A's. I'm so proud of you. So that type of thing, right? All that aside, look at the very end of Exodus in chapter 40, verses 34 to 38. Then the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Moses could not enter the tent of meeting because the cloud had settled upon it, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. In all the travels of the Israelites, whenever the cloud lifted from above the tabernacle, they would set out. But if the cloud did not lift, they did not set out until the day that it lifted. So the cloud of the Lord was over the tabernacle by day, and the fire was in the cloud by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel during all their travels. So, no need for skywriting for the Israelites, right? They've got a cloud containing the Lord's presence that rests over the tabernacle until the time comes for the Israelites to move. They go nowhere until the Lord tells them to go. If the cloud did not lift, they did not set out until the cloud lifted. Let's take a closer look at that cloud. Ezekiel gives us a good description. Likely not seen in such detail by most of the Israelites, but it's the same God in the cloud in Ezekiel's vision as the one who goes with the Israelites. So, look with me at Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 4. I looked and I saw a windstorm coming out of the north, an immense cloud with flashing lightning and surrounded by brilliant light. Sounds familiar? Fire was in the cloud by night, Exodus 40, verse 38. Zooming into that cloud, the center of the fire looked like glowing metal, and in the fire was what looked like 4 living creatures. In appearance, their form was that of a man, but each of them had 4 faces and 4 wings. Their legs were straight, their feet were like those of a calf and gleamed like burnished bronze. Under their wings on their 4 sides they had the hands of a man. All 4 of them had faces and wings, and their wings touched on one another. Each one went straight ahead. They did not turn as they moved. So at this point, I imagine Ezekiel dropped his telescope and rehinged his jaw that had been hanging open, right? Maybe not, but this description is only the beginning of God's throne. So, wherever the Spirit would go, they would go, without turning as they went, Ezekiel 1:12. In other words, the Spirit of God came to Ezekiel and did not stay still. These creatures moved with the Spirit. They went where he went. As I looked at the living creatures, I saw a wheel in the ground beside each creature with its 4 faces. As they moved, they would go in any one of the 4 directions the creatures faced. The wheels did not turn about as the creatures went. Taking stock of the vision so far, right? A cloud that moved. Inside the cloud, there was something bright. On closer inspection, it's molten metal. On even closer inspection, it's 4 living creatures with 4 faces and wheels within wheels. And Ezekiel takes a bit of time to say, every few minutes, every few words, that these creatures moved. When the living creatures moved, the wheels beside them moved. And when the living creatures rose from the ground, the wheels also rose. Wherever the Spirit would go, they would go, and the wheels would rise along with them. And then here's the best part. Spread out above the heads of the living creatures was what looked like an expanse, sparkling like ice and awesome. Americans overuse that word. I overuse that word. I noticed it especially when I lived in Ireland, and my go-to wrap up of anything pretty nifty was, "Hey, that's awesome." And the Irish, who use it less, would kind of nod in agreement and say, "It's brilliant," was their wrap up of the nifty thing. Either way, my use of the word does a disservice to the way that it's used here. Awesome, holy, majestic, mind-blowing, beyond understanding might be better descriptors. So it says, under the expanse of what sparkled like ice, their wings stretched out towards one another, and each had 2 wings covering its body. When the creatures moved, I heard the sound of their wings, like the roar of rushing waters, like the voice of the Almighty, like the tumult of an army. When they stood still, they lowered their wings. So here's the sight and sound. They move, and it's deafening. Have you ever tried to have a casual conversation next to a waterfall? You have to shout to be heard. I haven't stood in the middle of an army's tumult lately, but I imagine it's also loud. The sounds around you just fill you up so that it's overwhelming. You can hardly think. But when the creatures stand still, here's what happens. Then there came a voice from above the expanse over their heads as they stood with lowered wings. When they stand still, God speaks. He moves, and then he speaks. I hope you're figuring out where I'm going by this point. Above the expanse over their heads was what looked like a throne of sapphire, which is my favorite gem. The blue is just gorgeous. And high above on the throne was a figure like that of a man. I saw that from what appeared to be his waist up, he looked like glowing metal, as if full of fire, and that from there down, he looked like fire, and brilliant light surrounded him. Like the appearance of a rainbow in the clouds on a rainy day, so was the radiance around him. This was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. And Ezekiel can't stay on his own 2 feet. Note that it says likeness, the vision, the filtered effect, and it's still so overwhelming that he can't even stand up. When I saw it, I fell face down, and I heard the voice of one speaking. No wonder Moses' face shone when he had been speaking with the Lord in the tent of meeting. No wonder Ezekiel can't control his limbs, and he has to fall face down. This is awesome. It's not cool, not rad, not brilliant, not super, not even to dip back into the 80s tubular. God's throne is awesome. and God's throne moves wherever his spirit wants to go. I love Ezekiel's emphasis on movement. Why? How often do we forget that his spirit moves? The Israelites, they get a physical reminder of it, right? Hey guys, the cloud's up, time to pack up. Or Ezekiel gets a visual reminder of it. God's sapphire throne has wheels and creatures. We don't usually get skywriting. We don't usually get a cloud that forms a giant arrow in the sky and spells out the words, your destiny. So here's my thought train. God's throne moves wherever his spirit wants to go. Where is the dwelling place of God's spirit? It's in us. So when we want to know where or what or how or who, where do we look for guidance? We look to his spirit who lives in us. God's spirit who moves. I think we get stalemated sometimes, right? We think we don't have anywhere to go. There's nothing new under the sun, says the writer of Ecclesiastes. It's all been said and it's all been done. We're stuck. We're caught. Our lives are on pause while we wait for a vaccine, or we wait for a break in the stream of angry news that clutters up our news feeds. We're bolted down in discouragement because we forget one essential thing. God moves. So when it feels like we've come to the end of our train line, right? Don't forget, the journey is still ahead of us. He's still got places that he wants to take us and things that he wants to do through us. This awesome, awesome God who sits on a throne of sapphire above an expanse that sparkles like ice and is carried by 4 living creatures and has wheels and it moves. His spirit lives in you and in me, and he moves. That's amazing. Have a good day.